Yeah,
And
exactly
it's
right.
people. We're all humans, man. What we need doesn't change, and what we want doesn't change. That hasn't done anything, And the
Right.
fact that we work in a sort of cold entity, which is very black and white. Did you get paid? Did you not get paid? So
Yeah, this is it. We got to reintroduce the human element to it. It's a good deal.
yeah,
Well, hey, the time is here, my friend. It is time, everybody, for another power-packed episode of Evolved Sales Live. Welcome back. I'm Jonathan Fisher. In every tech company, whether you're I'm so sorry. Forgive me, everybody. Let's rewind the tape here, guys. That was my intro from another episode. Oh my goodness, I'm gonna lose my job. All right, let's try this again. You got? Are you still with me? Can we start our show? All right,
let's do that.
Welcome back. I'm Jonathan Fisher. In B2B sales, there's a lot of attention placed on things like prospecting, qualifying, sales funnels, sales enablement, pipeline management, and the like. And in most companies, all of these elements are directed at closing more business. Seems logical, but is it possible there's a more profitable and effective place to direct the focus of our sales efforts? Well, to share with us today why a client-centered focus is critical to sales success, along with some practical applications, is our guest, Ed Montgomery. A highly experienced business development leader, Ed has spent decades developing multi-channel go-to-market models, building and leading successful B2B sales teams, and generating explosive initial growth for startup businesses in a variety of sectors. Ed is a creative and passionate voice, having seen what works and doesn't work for putting the client first throughout the sales process. Ed Montgomery, welcome to our show.
Jonathan, thanks very much. It's quite the introduction. It's always funny to me, though, that every time someone says experience, it's followed by the word decades. It's like, well, yeah, that is me.
They go by quickly, don't they? I know. I'm trying to think
back
to the initial stages of my career. I'm like, wait a minute, Netscape Navigator and America Online were things back when I started. So yeah, it's been a minute.
Absolutely, and that's
I totally get it. That's pretty funny. Well, a quick reminder to our audience that we definitely want to give our fantastic guest a chance to answer your questions live. So don't be bashful. Go ahead and start sending in your questions in the chat section as we progress. And we will, at the half hour, we'll turn over to a Q&A session and get your questions answered right here, right now.
I like it.
Okay, well, Ed, jumping in real quickly by way of introduction, would you share with our audience what you do every day?
Well, I'm currently enterprise sales manager for Dispatch, and Dispatch is an on-demand courier service, a system where we can help you get stuff from A to B, sort of like Uber, and we can actually say that now because most people know what that is and how that looks and how it works. We're a business-to-business type organization, though, and we are focused on, commercial, those sorts of commercial efforts. So we're really big in the trades, and we have a national footprint. We're currently in 65 markets, opening 3 next month, 4 the month after that, 3 after that. We just continue to grow. But it's been a super ride, and I've been with them now 3.5 years. Through their startup, Dispatch will be about 6 years old at the end of this year, I think. So.
Excellent. Congratulations on that, by the way.
I'm working. The last piece of that is I'm kind of focused on the team for HVAC. We're aligned vertically so that we're kind of staying in sort of an expert mode space. And because of my experience as a contractor where I own my own company for a while, renovating, building houses, I just know HVAC really well. So that became a natural fit for me. And so I spend my time serving those customers around the country.
Very good. So you have a lot of B2B experience, and I know you have previous experiences before your current role. And we're going to talk about today the key insight that you bring, which is your selling has to be client-centric. Now, what's the counterpoint to that? Where, as you see it, is the focus in most sales operations?
Well, I mean, it's you see the missed focus all over the place all the time. LinkedIn, just about everywhere. A lot of sales training, a lot of sales things that are being pushed out there. It talks about what you can do to make more money, how you can get more to the bottom line, and everything else. And honestly, that's part of that paradox. Salespeople exist to generate revenue. That's the black and white of it. We're either getting paid or we're not. If we don't do our job, the people in the back don't get checks. They don't get to eat. So it's very critical that we do exactly that. However, what we see so much is these training, these focuses on how to pitch perfectly and what's the most effective tool to get someone to maneuver into a particular direction. make that positive buying decision. And it's more almost talking about manipulation than it is about selling. And you just see a lot of it. And it's like I said, there's some understanding and reasoning behind it because you got to generate revenue. But I just feel like there's, at least in my personal experience, there's been a far better way to do it.
Let's unpack that a little further. I mean, honing one's own craft as a sales professional certainly seems like that would have some merit. And as you already stated yourself, I mean, a sales pro is all about generating revenue. So that comes down to closing business, or as our friend Jeffrey Gidmer might say, opening new business, however you want to phrase that. What are the issues with it? What are the pitfalls that you see within that focus?
Well, I think what happens is you can wind up with a lot of people who buy that become unhappy, that buy something that they don't really need. And what that ends up doing is hurting you and your company in the long run, simply because someone's going to have a bad experience. And it's not just so much about selling something that they didn't need, it's selling something with bad expectations. I've always thought of managing expectations as being a critical aspect of my job. And so I've actually created kind of one interesting tactic that people have now, if they follow me, like, salespeople that I've been on calls with and trainings, they see me do it a lot and they're like, holy cow, you really do that. And it's just silly. But someone will ask a question and I know the answer's yes or maybe. I always say no. They go, can we do this? No. Well, I say that so quickly, but we could do it this way but I've learned by saying no and just cutting it off at the knees, the expectations suddenly drop. People immediately go, oh, well, you can't do it. But then I come back and say, well, I kind of can. And here, this is how it can be done. And I build them right back up to where now they feel good about how I answered it. And their expectations are where they should be. They are not something particularly high. Like I didn't say, oh, yeah, that happens all the time. We do it. It's just not a good way to go. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest pitfalls, is that what you're going to do is create a problem for yourself or for your company, or at the very least for your customer in the future.
Well, and I can see what you're saying. So in other words, if sales is primarily about just pushing somebody into a decision that results in a transaction, you may be setting yourself up for these other issues to bite you in the proverbial caboose.
And you're setting them up.
What are some other issues you see with that?
That's the part that bugs me. Well, that's the biggest thing. You're setting them up. And that's what probably bothers me the most, because, more often what we're selling, especially in a B2B environment, you're always selling something that is supposed to help them, supposed to help them do their job, make their life easier, whatever. But I always focus on the individual and think, even on that very personal level, what can I do to make their life easier? And if I'm doing that, that's great. But if I'm selling in a manner that it is not going to make their life easier, it's going to cause them a headache or a problem down the road, man, I have just blown it, especially human to human. That part just aggravates me. But from a selling standpoint, it also means you're going to have unhappy people out there talking badly about you, talking badly about your company, whatever. But they're not going to be sharing a positive experience if you've done it wrong.
Well, and that's everything today. I mean, they say that, bad news travels 10 times faster than good news, right? And those bad reviews can be so detrimental. Even Google, it takes 40 positive reviews to bury a negative review on Google, right? So
that doesn't surprise me a bit.
Yeah, that's the math. That's actually the new algorithm. You have to get 40 really good reviews before that 1 or 2 star will be pulled out of the math to calculate your overall star rating with Google.
Makes sense,
and that makes some sense. In a funny way, right? Because if you don't, that really says something when you don't care enough to really make sure that every single client is happy. That does make, but I'm going to push back a little bit, Ed, and just for the sake of the conversation, isn't that more of a delivery issue? I mean, isn't that really kind of failing in terms of promises as a company? So isn't it more like your customer success side? Is this really a business development and sales issue? Talk to me about that.
It can be, obviously, but it's usually the person who's saying the words. That's the one that's taking on the responsibility to back it up. One of my little favorite phrases in sales is promise as little as possible, but deliver everything you promise. So I try not to promise anything I can't guarantee, that I can't impact and make do. But if it's all about, I sell this product and somebody over here actually delivers and does that stuff, the last thing I'm going to do is promise stuff they're going to do. Cause now I could say this is what normally happens and this is how the process works and everything else, but I am not going to It's the salesman's responsibility to set the rest of the folks up there at the company for success, so that we all play from a position of strength, and so the customer sees that strength and experiences something positive.
That makes a lot of sense. Very quick side technical note. Do you have anyone else on your network, Ed? Because it seems like we're getting it cutting out just a little bit every so often.
I don't know that I do right at the moment. My wife did come home just a minute ago, but I don't know if she's on using the wire Wi-Fi or not. I'm sorry. Her office is upstairs, so.
If you need to multitask and text her to ask or not, that'd be fine for the sake of our audience here. We could take care of that. Keep it real up in here, people. So a little filler while we're talking. I mean, I've seen what you're talking about, Ed, many times, where and it's not always because like the salesperson is trying to do something wrong. Maybe they get a little overexcited. Could even be out of altruistic. I mean, literally, it's not like the old worn out cliche you see in movies of some shyster or a sales pro that does not have the best interest of the client at heart. This can even happen when a salesperson means well. Maybe they get overexcited. Maybe they get a little bit overpromising because they're in the moment, and salespeople are talkers. I've seen it happen there too. Would you agree with that? Is it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that just
pressure.
As much a risk?
Well, and it's pressure, and of course that's one of those pitfalls managers have to pay attention to too. We put so much pressure on somebody that they start towing that line because they feel under gun. I got to deliver something today, and I'm going to make something happen. I'm all for enthusiasm and making something happen. That's exciting, that's fun, and that's what our job is. We got to push, we got to fight, and frankly, you got to be a little competitive, I think, to be successful in sales, just because of the nature of the game. But you've got to watch that, and it's just like, man, go with the sports metaphor a little further. Don't cheat, just play the game and play it hard. But don't cheat.
Sure. Well, I like what you said there. Like, the whole thing about hitting deadlines, hitting goals. We understand that motivates action in ways that, it's just not going to happen on its own, right? These are proven approaches that managers can use to generate better results from their team. We understand that. However, when you're trying to qualify properly, it probably does make it hard to really actually sit on the other side of the table and really make certain that because you can hear what you want to hear when you're asking questions. The customer's saying something, you can hear it as for what it is.
And you ask questions to get certain answers. I mean, that happens. So,
right. Right.
But I will say that's one of the questions that I ask, and when I kind of like interview customers and prospects, and one of the questions I like to ask is about pressures they're under.
Yeah.
What sort of things pushes on them all day?
Nice.
So I can understand them a little bit more. But we can talk about that a little more in a minute. But that's one of those things. Because if I can understand their pressures, I can share mine, that sort of thing. You have these conversations that are much more person to person. And that is where I feel like you're selling from a stronger point, and they're buying from a stronger point, and there's a whole lot more trust in there, just because you both understand what the other one's dealing with.
Ed, I really like what you said right there, because I think and this makes a great segue. Let's start to move more toward what is the better alternative that we want to talk about today. And what you just gave was a key. If you could pick it up there. So I'm putting myself in that chair. I've been in that chair many times of developing business for a company, right? You're feeling that pressure. How can you get out of that mode and demonstrate empathy to that other party? You just gave us a golden nugget right there. One way is to just ask them about their pressures. So instead of this becoming a way to be separated from them and hear what you want to hear and not effectively qualify, all of a sudden you've actually flipped it exactly 180, and you're kind of united in this like feeling pressured state. And you could connect with that person. What you just shared is almost a way psychologically to tap into your own empathy when you're feeling pressured. That's really good stuff. So maybe unpack that further for us.
Sure. Well, I mean, and that's it works. And I start pretty much all this. It starts with a mindset. And what I want to do, and my number one rule in sales, and I tell salespeople all the time when I'm training, the first rule of sales is care about the person you're selling to. You got to care about them, because when you do that, when you get yourself in the thing where you're like, okay, I care about Jonathan. I mean, Jonathan's a guy. He's got a day. He's got a family to work and everything else going on. I need to pay attention to that. And then when I can care about Jonathan, one thing I'm going to do, I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to pay attention to you. I'm going to want what's good for you. I'm going to work hard for you. And so those things are really, really important to put yourself in that position first, where you're thinking about that other person as a person. And then that can, move into how you do how you question, how you qualify, how you do all the stuff that salespeople do, and I do it too. And you mentioned that qualifying a prospect, you threw that out there. That's critical. Is perfect. Is that when you're in this mindset, the questions that I ask, and I ask kind of the same basic stuff. It's almost like an interview, and I won't go into the part about how you get to this step, because it doesn't just happen on like a cold call. Hey, I want to ask you 10 questions with 6 follow-ups. Let's do this. But the questions I ask have nothing to do with me or my business, and they shouldn't. What they should enlighten me to things where my business can fit in their business, but they don't have to be about my business or even the focus of it. And they're not. In the beginning, it's tell me about your primary goal or focus every day. What's the purpose of your job? You could tell me. You start telling me, well, I do this, this, and this, and this is the most important thing I got to deal with. Okay. What sort of issues or challenges are in your way every day? What's that look like? They talk about that. And then I ask about, okay, what strategies have you got to kind of overcome or address those issues? Head them off. What do you do? And talk about those things there. And then it's getting into the pressures question. What sort of pressures you face every day? Biggest customer complaints. What goes on? And then I'm understanding those things. Then I can say, okay, what about biggest customer compliments? What do you hear that are great, on a regular basis? What do customers say about you? And then I get into what are the benefits of working with you? Why do your customers work with you? What's good for them? By asking those things and going in those directions, what I'm doing is I'm moving around the desk and I'm sitting next to them looking at their customer. So that now we're shoulder to shoulder selling their business, not mine. Then as we get through though and get towards the end of it, that's when I ask myself in my head, what can I do to help? There should be something in there, and knowing what my company does and knowing my stuff really well, there should be something, or I wouldn't have gotten this far, bothered to go this far with them. I wouldn't have called them in the first place. I kind of have a feeling they need something that we do. And so now I'm at that point, and I've got that. And now I've got the best information, because one of those the true statements in the world is people buy more because of what we know about them than what we know about us. They will ask us all about us and ask us all our detailed information. Oh, what about this? How do you handle that? But they're going to start doing that when they realize you understand them. And that's when it's really going to become more of that conversation. You're going to have a much more productive, trusting sort of conversation. And those things lead to it. So when you get down to when I say it out loud to the person, how can we help? They tell me. And they'll go right into, so what's the next step? How do we move forward? I don't have to do it. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense once you have that level of connection and they're being that open with you. I do have a question sort of just a little bit earlier on. Like even some of the questions you're asking that, as you said it, you're on their side of the table. You're sitting at their desk looking at their customer challenges. Even getting to that point, I can see that being a challenge. So how do you move from A to B to C? Can you set that up? Just break that down.
This is where, moving from a cold call in, this is where smart selling is smart selling. Number one, identifying quality prospects. So, who does business with you? Most of us are not dealing with something that's just a straight out of the gate startup. Some are, but even when you do that, you're defining your ideal customer. When the company's been in business for a little while, like Dispatch, we can look at it easy and go, these are our ideal customers. So I can go out and find people that look like that. Now we've got a cold call, and that's where you're going to have, you want to practice being fairly smooth to say things like, and I've got one I cold call every day that, where it starts and goes right through it. I say it quickly and smoothly and easily and say, this is why, we work with companies like yours doing this. Is that something you ever have to deal with? If they say yes, and most of them do, because if I've identified them properly and looking, on the web or whatever, and anything I can use to research them, if I've identified them properly, the answer to that question is going to be yes. Then the next thing is, can I email you some introductory information? And I do that because that takes the first pushback, the first stiff arm out of the way, which is always, I go, yeah, that's something I could talk about, but I'm busy right now. Can you email me something? I want to get rid of that right out of the gate. So say, all I'm asking for today, because it's a cold call, is can I have permission to send you a quick email and just introduce what we do. And then I'll follow up after that. The answer is usually yes.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And then once they get that, again, this is qualifying them. It's getting them to self-select. It's a marketing term. It's getting them to raise their hand and say, yeah, I'm interested. I give them that information and I send out X number of those every day. And then I'm going to have X number of people raise their hand and say, yep, talk to me again. I'm going right back to them. And we're going to talk. And now I've got permission to spend some time with them and learn more about them and talk about what we're doing. So that's how I get to that step.
Let's move up just a level. So you've run teams and you know how to motivate men and women that are sales professionals to operate with your client-centric methodology. Talk to us about that, because you kind of have a bit of an irony here where you are going to be the one who you're putting deadlines. You're setting goals and you have expectations. You're measuring KPIs. How do you balance that, and what are some of your best practices as a sales leader?
Well, the idea is to talk most about you don't do KPIs for KPI's sake. It's not, well, got to have 40 phone calls today. I'm at 38. The idea, though, is those numbers exist. They should exist because they're shown to work. And so that's why you can go back. So as a manager, you want to make sure that everyone's clear on the idea that 40 phone calls a day is done because 40 phone calls results into some number of meetings, which results in some number of sales. And those sales will make you successful. And so the KPIs have to matter. So one of the worst things we can do, and my wife actually tells a story from the past when her very first sales job, she was out selling everyone in this telemarketing thing, selling printer parts and stuff. It was kind of neat for Xerox way back in the day. I'll say their name. And but her manager's always like, "You're not making enough phone calls." And she's like, she'd point to the board, but I'm number one up there.
Yeah.
She had a different way of doing it that worked extremely well. So we, as managers, we don't want to ever take our eye off the ball, which again, cold hard fact is we're here to generate revenue. And so we need to look at that. Now, that being said, you can manage revenue backwards and just go, okay, you can do whatever you want, but if you don't hit these numbers, then what? I don't like that because it's a pass-fail test. At the end of a quarter, you're like, didn't hit your numbers. Bye. That's no good.
Yeah.
You don't shoot the dog, the puppy, just because it has an accident on the rug. You teach it, but you've got to have teachable moments. So KPIs offer teachable moments.
Yeah, I think we've all, most of us, I think, can relate to having a manager who gets a little stuck on process.
Sure.
And immediately comes to mind the whole TPS reports thing in Office Space, right?
Right.
Where it's just a pointless
I'm going to
exercise.
need you to come in on Saturday. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that'd be great.
That'd be good.
So what are some other tips and tricks that you can share with our audience, Ed, in terms of making certain that we're keeping things client-centric? Can we, especially in some of our very fast-moving startups that tend to be in our listening audience, are there some red flags that can let us know, hey, we're getting a little too focused in the close? Maybe there's some issues. Let's make some adjustment here.
It's interesting you bring that up because one of those things about me, I have ADD. I've had my whole life diagnosed thing, and it's so it's one of those things where people now. They look at me and go, wow, you're so detail-oriented. And I'm like, no, I'm not. But I want to be. And wanting, your want to is probably the most powerful driving force you can possibly have. So I would say the very first thing is you have to want to care about the other people. And you have to want to understand them. So some things, tactically speaking, and again, what I do for myself, I make little lists and notes that I have. So I just follow these things. I have a little whiteboard here that I put on, that I write. I've been doing this 36 years, and I still have goals of the demo written right up there so that I can glance at it right before I go into anything to make sure that what I'm doing is I'm showing a solution to their problem, not anybody else's, theirs.
That's good.
And I'm using their examples. And I'm going to build enthusiasm for our product or service. So I'm going to present this in a way that builds excitement, because the final thing is I want to check. I want him to say, yes, let's buy that thing. So,
of course,
but it's having those things in there. The other thing I would say that's a very smart thing to do, and a lot of people find it a little awkward, but especially for cold calling and things like that, you got just a brief couple of seconds to kind of get things in. You want to learn, practice, test, and find the best way to get the best response from somebody quickly, easily, in an unintrusive way. And the best way to do that, try it live with real people. When you start finding positive responses, go to the bathroom, stand in front of the mirror 3 or 4 times every day, out loud, looking at yourself. Just say it. Just say it and say it and say it, so that it comes very naturally. It'll become your voice, your cadence, your pace, and it's smooth. And if you're paying attention to how people react, then it's going to get better and better and more refined as you go on. But there's no excuse for not practicing. You got to do that.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, keeping those tactical skills sharp, that's really great advice. Still staying on that leadership rubric, and keeping the team motivated with that client-centric focus when we still have to measure these other metrics. Would you agree? Is there some use in maybe telling more customer stories? I mean, most sales managers don't talk about that. They're just going to talk about the numbers, right? And they're going to celebrate the people that seem like they're hitting numbers, and they're going to say, "Hey, you better work hard a little harder." And the people that aren't hitting the numbers, and there's not that much. I mean, in my own work through the years, I've actually seen inside many companies, and I only need one hand to count the ones where they talked that much about true customer success, like literally,
right.
Like here's what was happening in this company. They had this issue, and we got it solved. Yay, team! Like there's something. Is there some utility in that? Do you think that sales managers and business development officers should become better storytellers?
I think salespeople in general, being great storytellers is a critical aspect of your job. I mean, it just is. You can tell a story with enthusiasm and drama and comedy and everything, but you bring all that to it, and people are going to pay attention to it. They're going to remember it. And again, that is one of those things that helps build enthusiasm, is to be a good storyteller. And from a managerial standpoint, that's one of the things that, like in all of our meetings that we have, I mean, we're always asking for success stories, but it's not like, hey, somebody got $57,000. No, it's
right.
Tell me about XYZ company and what happened, and then they tell the story, and then you get to the $57,000. But the idea is that you want to be able to have those stories and those successes, because telling the story is what's going to sink in and become effective. And as managers, we need to keep doing that. So I'll give you a quick fun example. One of the things that we come up against all the time, we building supply stores or companies, and we're trying to get them to start using dispatch for their on-demand delivery, and people their initial pushback is, we got trucks and we got our own stuff. We don't need we never need to send somebody out. So I was a contractor, so I have 2, but so I taught everyone this. I even shot a video when we were building an additional house, and I said, all you got to do is ask them. So you mean you don't ever have customers call in and towards the end of the day and say, I've run out of trim coil, can you get something out to me? 100% of a building supply place that sells trim coil is going to go, oh yeah, that happens a couple times a week. Yes, it does.
Right.
And it's because of what trim coil is. So we won't do it here, but I did a little video, explain to everybody, this is what trim coil is and why it's such a pain in the butt, and why people call every day and say, I need more trim coil. And I ran out. It's urgent. It's an urgent need. And that's where we happen to fit pretty well, is in those sorts of situations. So it's having that trim coil story, being ready to go. The other one is dropping a bag of grout. Somebody drops a bag of grout in the driveway, and you're doing a remodel, and that $15 bag of grout just cost me $100 as the owner of that company.
Right.
Because now I got to pull somebody off the job to go out and get another one and bring it back. And no one goes out and back. That doesn't happen. They go get coffee and stall and do whatever. It takes time, and you're paying them to be behind the windshield or sitting around doing nothing. So, it's knowing those sorts of things and having those little stories you can tell. But as a manager, that's what you want to do, is make sure they hear those stories. The other thing is, falling back on these little these things that I use, people don't do what you expect, they do what you inspect. So as a manager, you need to ask them to tell you the stories. So when you're calling up, when you're talking to them in your one-on-ones, and you're saying, okay, here's your KPIs, here's this. All right, tell me, what was the most embarrassing call you had this week? Tell me. And you get them practicing telling stories.
Yeah, I love that. Well, a reminder to our audience that today's show is sponsored by Overpass.com. Are you looking to hire a team of ready-to-work remote sales professionals fast? There are thousands of highly qualified sales reps waiting for you on the Overpass Talent Marketplace. As the world's leading solution for hiring pre-vetted talent, Overpass makes building an unstoppable sales team quick and easy. Filter by industry and experience. interview, hire, and begin your onboarding process in as little as 2 days. Create your free account today at overpass.com. Well, it's been a great conversation. It's blown by. How would people find you? There's really two ways they could find you. If you're a business and you're listening and you need to deliver anything from point A to point B, they could potentially look at your dispatch company for help, correct? How would they best find you?
Absolutely. The easiest thing, dispatchit.com. Because if you need something
Beautiful.
quickly done right away, you can sign up right there, free account, and all that great stuff. Or you can just contact me through LinkedIn. I'm easy to reach.
That's great. That can be last mile delivery, pinch hitting it. That's what you said compares to Uber. So something else fell through. This could be a quick and easy solution for you. Very good. How do they reach you personally? If you want to talk to Ed Montgomery, how do they reach you?
LinkedIn. LinkedIn is there. My cell number, it's published. I don't care. I'll talk to people all the time. I'm happy to help anybody who needs help. So just find me on LinkedIn and you can reach out.
Okay, good stuff. All right. Well, let's veer for just a little bit of Q&A here. Sure. We've got a couple of questions here. We have one guy who's very technically oriented, apparently, named, let's see here, who was that from? That's from Andrew. He's wondering how, is there like sort of a scientific methodology at play here where you could kind of see ahead of time? Is there something like as you're putting all those metrics on a spreadsheet or however you like to measure, there's different approaches, obviously, maybe more seat of the pants as a manager. There's every angle, right? Are there ways, and I kind of asked this before, but let's maybe go deeper for Andrew's sake, that you can kind of spot that you're not client-centric enough in your approach?
I would say that that's number one, great question, because I happen to be very data hungry type of person in finding information out. I will say that what you've got to do is create a KPI that you can use that somehow measures the depth of what they know about their customers. And it depends on what's important and what's not. Because again, you don't want KPIs that you're looking at that are, hey, did you get their birthday? Yeah, that's a personal piece of information and shows you've gotten a very far way if you can get that piece of information out of somebody. But however, is it worthwhile? You find something else, I would think, to do. But I think, you can't manage what you don't measure. And it's important to do that sort of thing. So, with us, it is more down in those KPIs, and it's me looking at listening to call logs, watching, looking at the notes in our CRM system and making sure that things are in there accurately and everything else, and that the notes are good. So, unfortunately, I really don't have a great spreadsheet item that does it, but what I do look at is what do the notes look like after a meeting? If the notes are great meeting and nothing else, that's a teaching moment. You've got to have more detail. To that point,
could you almost create like and this would be self-reported obviously, but could you almost create like a star rating, either 1 to 10 or 1 to 5, and the high end is, hey, we're about ready to grab ball tickets and go see it together, and 1 is I know their name and location and what they do, and they can kind of self-rate how well they know the customer. Does that strike you as something that could be useful in this vein?
Yeah, I think it could be. It definitely could be. I like that.
So good stuff. And then Dennis is asking, what's the number one way people fail at being client-centric?
Being self-centric, focusing on themselves and their own needs. I will say one of those, again, funny story. One of my very first sales job, actually, we were trained, we had scripts, we had a little booklet you could flip through and respond to certain actions. And what it did was it did help you become smoother as far as responding to generic questions. But what it also did was it became such a crutch that I wasn't actually paying attention to the people. And so I was calling in and the person said, I said, hey, is such and such there? No, I'm sorry, he died last night. My instant response without doing anything else was, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Can you tell me who's in charge of buying office products now? It was like, what? And it's because that's the response when the person's no longer there, and it's like, but I wasn't paying attention. So the biggest failure is not paying attention. And so you've got to be paying attention all the time. And that goes all back to what I said about want to. Start with wanting to. Yeah, having your own agenda.
Like
my wife's here. Wife's here coaching Matt too.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thanks for telling on yourself, Ed. That we can all miss the mark of our own best ideals.
We're all
right?
humans. We're all humans. No one's going to be perfect. And honestly, you got to be willing to be bad at something in the beginning, and that's okay. Just you're going to get better if you keep working at it. So.
Yeah, right. Hey, since you have been kind enough to be so vulnerable, let me add a question to the mix if I could.
Sure.
As a fellow ADHD guy, what are some of your personal tips and tricks for staying focused on the right things? Since you can think about everything at once and you can probably get a lot done, but it's not going to necessarily work it doesn't always mesh as well with systems as it might. What are your tips? And you can't get off track easily sometimes, depending on the day, right? So what are some of your tips there's a lot of people in business development that fit that profile, right? What are some of your best practices around that issue? Self-management, I guess you could say.
I will say, CRM. CRM.
Three letters, CRM.
That is my lifesaver right there.
Mm-hmm.
And it is because, again, I wanted to be organized. I wanted to be focused. So I created things that would help me do that. And so early on, way back, 106 years ago, every night before going to bed, I would make a list of here's the things I have to do tomorrow. And I would have them on a list. And so that was what I did. So that's good. So I would have those things listed. And so that's what I did. But now CRM, most beautiful thing in the world. But you have to live in it. So use it for the tool that it is and use it in the moment. Don't put stuff off to key it in towards the end of the day. Do it on the fly. Do it while you're doing it. Because some people say, oh, but it's so slow doing that. No, it's not. It's better because you become more efficient. And man, it's a beautiful thing. At the end of the night, I turn off my computer. I'm done. I walk away. I don't have to remember a thing because tomorrow morning, it's telling me. Now, my CRM works me all day, every day because I make sure it's in there. So, but that's it.
It's another case in point as to why tech stack is so important in the mix as well, isn't it? You've got to have a well-developed tech stack, including and especially including that CRM piece.
Oh, amen.
Don't go with the free version, right? I know a lot of startups are bootstrapping it. It's develop out your HubSpot or go ahead and spring for Salesforce or get a solution that really works well. That's going to help guide the process of your team.
It is going to make you money.
Make you money all day long, right? Perfect investment. So, Ed, thanks so much for being on the show today. It's been a fantastic ride. And for our entire audience and for Overpass.com, I want to thank you once again for being on Evolve Sales Live.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me back.
All right. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye now.